Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the Deliberate Dad podcast. I'm Steve, and this is the podcast where you learn how to live deliberately, right? So you can show up for everyone and everything that matters, including yourself. And today we have the fantastic Chris Britton with us. So I had to actually write down all the things that Chris is because you do so many things, Chris.
I know.
But
Well, yeah, feel free to read them out. It'll make me feel good.
yeah, exactly. So Chris is the people experience director at Reward Gateway. That's his job as one. You always lead with that for some reason. A National Football League referee, a volunteer in the Sussex Police, appreciation expert, and a very recent best-selling author.
Yeah,
Behind the I'm Fine, a book of masculinity that we'll talk about today, and most importantly, dad to Orla, right?
that's all. And one on the way. So, dad
And
to
one on
another
the
one.
way. Oh, I didn't know that. Congratulations.
Yeah. It's due in mid October. So, another one on the way.
Mid October. Exciting. I'll not go into the detail of my last 7 months, Chris, because you're already in it. But the transition from one to two was definitely more of an experience than I thought it was going to be.
Well, I appreciate using the word experience rather than any other word that you possibly could have used there. But yeah, all good. It'll be fine.
How old's Orla now?
She is nearly 3, so she'll be 3 in September. And so she's looking forward to being a big sister, which is good.
Yeah, yeah. Pearl was just 3 when Lenny was born, and definitely was a good age. Like now, when he's 6 months old, you can sort of leave them playing almost, right? Like she loves being the big sister, and actually, us playing with him, me and Jess playing with him versus Pearl playing with him, he thinks she's the funniest person in the world. So it
Yeah.
actually makes it a lot easier than I thought, to be honest.
Will be helpful rather than a hindrance. And I think any younger than that, I can only imagine like it'd be absolute chaos if you have like quick back-to-back children. It'd be absolute nightmare. So yeah, 3 we think is a good separated age.
Yeah. So anyway, you're doing it regardless of whether it's fair or not.
It's happening.
Um, so we've got a lot to talk about today, obviously with that big list of things, and I really want to get on to your book and especially this idea of being an appreciation expert and how you've used that in your job and with parenting as well and how you live your life. But my first question, right, this is all around being a deliberate dad and ultimately living deliberately, right? So of course with the parenting stuff, but making sure that you're looking after yourself so you can show up for everything and everyone that matters. So but we all have different versions of what that means,
Yeah.
right? So what would be your version of that, Chris, being a deliberate dad?
Well, my version is firstly, I don't think fatherhood is what I expected it to be. So I think I went into having Orla expecting me to think and feel in a particular way and to kind of switch into dad mode and be good at it and all that sort of good stuff. But actually, what I realized pretty early on is the only way I can be good for me, the only way I can be good as a dad is if I'm good for Chris. And if I'm not feeling my best or feeling like I have my own things going on, and you've listed a lot of them, I find it difficult to show up as my best self as just a dad. And it sounds like almost brutal when I say it out loud, but I'm sure you probably know what I mean. I don't want to just be seen as a dad. Like I want to be Chris, and I want to be a husband, and I want to be a police officer, I want to be a football referee, I want to do all of that sort of stuff. It just what that allows me to do personally is when it is dad time, I know that I'm in dad mode. So I'm not thinking, God, I wish I was doing this, or I wish I had done that, or I'm so sad that I had to stop doing this, or sad to stop doing that, because I'm still doing all that stuff, and that means when I've got dad mode on, I'm fully there, fully present, and fully cognizant of the fact that Orla needs me to do that. And but when I go and do my stuff for Chris, I'm fully invested in that as well. And so that allows me, yeah, showing up as my best self means I have to do things that allow me to be my best self, and that is stuff that isn't just being a dad.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And it's funny though, like I feel like that isn't the norm, right? Or the perception that that isn't the norm. And it's interesting you even said it, that it sounds a bit brutal saying it out loud, but logically, when you list all of those things, it makes total sense, right?
I know, but we just don't talk about it because it possibly for fear of sounding really quite quite cutthroat. And I remember in the first couple of weeks of Orla being born, I can liken my feelings really to grief. I felt like I was grieving because I had to stop all of those things that you just listed, all the stuff I love doing, because I was fully invested in, for obvious reason, very small child, wife in recovery from birth, and adjustment with sleep and habits and all that sort of stuff. But I really missed doing the stuff that I liked doing. And as a result of that, my mental health suffered. And on top of the tiredness, on top of the not knowing what I'm doing, on top of the feeling like you're not a great husband anymore, all that sort of stuff. And so I had no outlet for my emotion. So for me, that kind of that was a wake up call to me. Is I've got to find time to be Chris to allow me to be the best dad possible. And without that, if I don't know, if you take football for example, and during the summer I'm a nightmare because I've got no outlet for my energy in terms of like physical. I can go to the gym and all that sort of stuff, but the actual physical running around and doing something that you enjoy, I really miss it. I can't wait to get back to it. And so I struggle sometimes in down periods of not being able to do the stuff that I personally enjoy as an adult. And so yeah, I feel the differences. But if we talked about this stuff more, right, there'd be more dads out there who kind of go, yeah, actually, it does make sense. Like, how can you thrive if you're not? How can you thrive as a dad if you're not thriving as a human being? And by the way, some dads will. That is their thing. They just want to be a dad, and that's all they want to do, and they love it, and they take all their energy from it. Great. Like, I think it's quite a personal thing. That's not for me. And actually, it's not the same for my wife either. We've had this conversation about she doesn't just want to be a mum. She wants to be Grace as well, and she needs to do the stuff that she likes to do, and because that way she can show up the best way she can as a mum as well. So I think it goes both ways, mum and dad.
Yeah, totally, and it does feel counterintuitive. I remember the first time I thought about that logically and said it out loud, and one of the terms I've coined for this, like when I've been working with my clients, is this idea about being deliberately selfish, where I've done it as a provocative term, but the idea is like you're putting yourself first, your needs first, to exactly as you said, show up for everyone and everything that matters. And actually, by not doing that, that's actually the selfish move, right? Because as you said, you won't have the energy to show up as a dad for Orla, as a present husband. You won't be able to put all your energy into being that football league referee in work, being the best person that you can be. And you make a really good point is around defining what your version of that is, right? And that's why I asked the question, because everyone's is different. And I think like one of the problems with dads especially is because they're so fucking head down.
Yeah.
Because we've got loads on, right? Don't get me wrong. Like we've listed everything that you've said there. My last 6 months have been chaos. We've got loads on. But a lot of guys, a lot of dads just go head down their whole way through their 30s into their 40s. They look up and they're like, what the fuck just happened? And they hadn't properly defined what that version of being a dad or being Chris or being Steve or being a man actually is.
No, and I think without a decent level of self-awareness, I can quite easily see how that spirals into lots of different things: poor relationships, poor health, whether physical, social, or mental, or financial. And I think one of the things that really sticks in my mind about this whole thing from a dad's angle is the sayings have existed for years. If you think about being on an airplane, right, they always say, put your own oxygen mask on before you help other people around you type thing. It's just unreasonable to expect dads to show up and have their peak energy when, if you take, for example, a lot of companies have really dodgy and quite frankly ridiculously short parental leave, paternity leave things. I remember going back to work and having this conversation with Grace post Orla. I only had 2 weeks, and actually one of those weeks I had to book as annual leave. I remember very distinctly going back to work and being exhausted, and then coming home and being exhausted and trying to do everything and just being exhausted. I didn't feel like I was doing anything well. I kind of didn't feel like I was good at dad, good at husband, good at work anymore. But one of the things that kind of struck me, and again, I've had this conversation with Grace, and I definitely don't think this is talked about very often, is when mums become mums, they, for a period of time, a lengthier period of time, they cease one career and pick up a new career. So they put down one full-time job, part-time job, whatever, and they pick up another full-time job, which is that of being a primary caregiver in most situations. for a lot of dads, they just add another career on top of another career. Because of these short paternity leaves, they go back to work, to their career, their job, their 9 to 5, their Monday to Friday, whatever it is, whatever way they're working, then got to come home and have this other job of being a dad. And it's just stacked one on top of the other. And I think that I never heard anyone talk to me about that. No one ever said that you might feel like you're not very good at any of this, particularly in the early stages, because you're just trying to adjust. But one thing Grace and I definitely agreed with each other is we're just experiencing parenthood in very different ways. A dad's angle and a mum's angle, although you have some shared commonality, they're just very different. And it's not competition about who's tired, who's not tired, who's busier, who's not busier. It's just different. I think we just have to acknowledge they're different, and that would help dads seek help, talk about these things more openly, and just be more knowledgeable about the things that might well happen or not happen, and be more prepared to deal with it.
Yeah. I think before, like for me anyway, when you think you're prepared, right? But it's the cliches are true for for a reason. It's really hard to understand how you're going to feel and what your life actually is until you experience it. Like it's really, really difficult. You can read all the books, you can watch all the YouTube videos, listen to the podcasts, as you said. And yes, like this whole idea of having the two careers is a really like articulate way of putting it. And again, your whole like mindset and priorities just completely flip, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the things I always think about was I was really struggled to find my purpose, right? Before we had kids, it was like a big thing in my mind. It's like, should I find it from work? Can I find it from this? I'll volunteer here. I'll do that. And then when I have Pearl, bang, I don't need to think about that ever again in my life, right? Because that's the thing that just slots in at the top automatically. But as you said, 2 weeks in, you've got to go into exactly the same job with your whole mind completely different. Like your whole perspective on life is completely different. Plus, you have a whole other career to deal with, plus a whole new season of marriage to deal with, right? As well, because that's completely different. So without necessarily an acknowledgement or support, and again, this isn't a zero-sum game. There could be way more support for women as well. But I would say, like, we've had conversations offline about this as well, you know, with the length of paternity leave, plus also the support that dads get when they actually go back to work. You know, I've been having conversations the last few weeks with people, and it's pretty much non-existent. It's not even a thought process. And people that you know that I've worked in HR have been like, "Oh yeah, now you've said that, like we didn't actually do anything," and it's just not something that's in people's awareness.
No, it's not. But thankfully, I mean, I see it, and I can definitely see, you know, from people like yourself and others, there definitely seems to be an appetite to want to support dads in fatherhood more broadly, but actually particularly in the early weeks and months of being a new dad. But yeah, I mean, the whole getting prepped for a dad thing. I mean, yeah, you're right. We listened to the podcast. I read a book and went to NCT classes, all that sort of stuff. But for me, it always felt like it was geared towards the mum and like skirting around the edges of how it felt for the dad.
Okay, we're back, Chris. We lost you again for a second there, but you were just saying that you thought all the sort of pre-baby stuff when you were in NCT was all focused on the mum.
Certainly felt that way, yeah. And it kind of felt like from a dad's angle, it was skirting around the edges. I remember having like an hour of this is how to change the baby, this is how to bath the baby, but the rest of it was all about birth. It was all about things that could go wrong, all that type of thing. And also, you know, for me anyway, and I think a lot of dads that I've spoken to, their view of what early fatherhood would be like is a little bit what you expect, what the movies are like, right? So you kind of go in thinking you're going to get this rush of love and adrenaline and this feeling of instant bonding, because that's what the movies portray, and that might well happen for some guys. What I distinctly remember at the birth for me, outside of the chaos of the actual birth itself, wasn't all the emotions that were flooding me. It was all the emotions that I didn't have. And I felt nothing. I felt nothing for a good few weeks afterwards, other than this is just really bloody hard work. And that kind of, you know, changes as time goes on, and I've definitely learned to love and bond and grow and all that sort of stuff. But that wasn't my experience right early on. And what that led me to think personally, because this might well happen to other guys, I don't know, but no one ever talked about it. So I just assumed there was something wrong with me. I felt, oh, I must be broken then. Maybe I'm incapable of being a good dad or loving or any of that sort of stuff. But actually, from speaking to other dads, a lot of people say to me, yeah, it felt the same. Like I didn't feel it. It was just hard work. I didn't feel a connection right away. I didn't feel it for weeks, months afterwards. So why does no one talk about that then? Why does no one prep you for that side of what could or could not happen? So I just thought that was a really interesting thing for me. It wasn't all the emotions. It was none of the emotions.
And like I distinctly remember for both of my kids, my feeling was relief.
Yeah.
Like the thing was over. And especially with Pearl, it was like, this is the woman that I love, and she is in a lot of pain, and this baby is doing this to her. I just want this to be over. And definitely wasn't a feeling of, as you said, like, oh, the baby's here. It was more of a relief for me. And again, like the bond that a mum naturally has with their child, you're sort of a bit obsolete. Well, that's what I felt for a period of time. You know, a glorified butler, which is a super important role in the household, totally, especially with the trauma of birth. But creating that bond with your child, 100%, definitely took a lot longer for me as well. But again, no one really talks about it because it feels like it's wrong almost, right? So then there's no knowledge passed on from
Yeah.
friends, from family, from anyone.
No, it's one of those little games, I think, that everyone knows it, but no one talks about it. We're all kind of dancing around thinking the same things, but no one dares say it out loud, which is just stupid. Because one of the things I've definitely come to know about men's health, particularly, is the sense of being able to have a community and like-minded people who can empathize with you from a place of reality is so important. Um, and if no one's talking about it, even though people are feeling it, then that just seems like a real wasted opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And like one of the interesting things I've obviously done with my work is get groups of guys together, and they always come in for the self-development of the individual, right? For themselves to gain skills, to live more deliberately, to manage their time, to manage their priorities, energy, all of the things that I talk about on a regular basis. But when we have the group calls or when we meet up, that's always the feedback, right? It's great to be in an environment, or it's great to hear people talking about things that have affected me as well. And it's not just me that's in here, right? And everyone always sees themselves in the questions that other people ask. So actually just being in the environment and having the courage and to put yourself in that place, even if you don't actually speak up or don't talk about it, listening to others helps you feel a lot more reassured that, as you said earlier, like there isn't something wrong with you because no one else is talking about it.
Yeah, I think absolutely spot on. And I remember one of the inspirations for me writing this book was someone had said to me when I was talking about men's kind of groups and communities and that sort of stuff, and talking about education on things like male cancers and all that sort of stuff, and feelings and emotions and these types of things. Someone said to me, a female said to me, "Yeah, my husband would never talk about that sort of stuff. Not all men want to talk about this stuff, Chris." And that kind of bothered me because I was thinking that's definitely part of the problem here is not all men might want to talk about it, but I'm pretty confident there's more men that just don't know how or haven't been given the opportunity to talk about it in a space that's non-judgmental and safe. So I kind of start with that premise that guys at the very least want to be educated and at least have some knowledge because we are by nature fixers and we like to be pragmatic where possible. So at least being not, armed with the knowledge of these types of things is helpful and allows us to make informed choices. But I think not having spaces where men can open up with other men about things that are uniquely male is just silly. Like you've got to have those spaces in place. Like by avoiding them for whatever reason, whatever reasons exist, you're just silencing emotions that clearly exist inside of guys, and of course, unchecked and unspoken about, have knock-on impacts in all parts of society and behavior.
Yeah, totally, totally. Here's a question for you. Like, what do you think about personal agency in that context? So, I 100% agree to you. There isn't loads of easily accessible environments. Like, you can't just walk in off the street in most streets. It takes a lot of digging. It takes a lot of effort to actually find somewhere. Totally. So I totally agree that, like, if there was more education, if it was easier to do, more people would do it.
Of course.
But there is the other school of thought, right? That if you want to do it, if you want to find it, if you recognize there is a thing, you could either create something for yourself or find something. So yeah, like what are your thoughts on personal agency when it comes to that?
Yeah, but I think accountability for guys is so important in terms of how we think, feel, behave, and impact people. I was chatting to someone just this morning about big government policy around men's health and paternity and all this, domestic abuse and all this stuff that's happening. And he was asking me for my view on it. I said, look, big stuff like that is needed, of course it is, and any policy shifts or budgets or whatever that kind of pushes towards a better place for all parts of society, particularly men's health, all for it. I think it's very, very important. But actually, that sort of big change stuff doesn't really change much very quickly, if ever, because it just kind of, it's big, then it's not, and then people talk about it, then they don't. So if real change wants to take place in terms of our behaviors and our relationships, it's got to start with us. It's got to start with us as individuals, and taking accountability for our own actions, our own thoughts and feelings and behaviors, and actually influencing those in your world. So trying to change the world, as in the 8 billion people in it, feels a little bit unrealistic and perhaps a little bit out of our reach. But we can absolutely change the little worlds that we own in our own circle, whether that's family or friends. So taking accountability for actions, and if we notice something either in ourselves or indeed in the people we're closest to, your mates, your brother, your uncle, your dad, whatever, then taking responsibility to go, hey, what's going on? Talk to me about it. Let's go for a walk. Let's go for a pint. And so I think waiting for big change to happen around us is you're just waiting for something which may or may not ever take place. Those little changes, that kind of grassroots evolution of men's communities and men's health more broadly and role models can start by me picking up my phone right now and shooting a mate a text that I've not seen in a couple of weeks just to check that he's okay. And so, yeah, I agree. Personal agency, personal accountability is so, so important. That doesn't require any effort other than just a thought and a quick action.
Yeah, totally. I love that. I love that. And I think we underestimate the impact of tiny actions as well. Like, we think, as you said, to change the world, to make significant changes in our life, we need to rip the whole thing up, when actually it's a lot of deliberate choices. So like you said, I feel like this, I want to have a conversation with someone. How do I go about that? What is my strategy? Probably text a mate. And we probably underestimate the impact that one person can have on a massive network as well, because you chat to your brother, you chat to a mate, which then opens their eyes to chat with a mate down there, say to someone in work, and someone posts something about that, etc., etc., and you have all this effect just because you've taken that action. And like I remember I'd set up like a local dads group in Ascot, and it was mainly because my wife's a florist. And last summer, summer before, she was working loads of weekends. And I've got some friends, right, around here, but not loads and loads. And people do family stuff at weekends. So I created this group and we met in the park a couple of times. And then I arranged like a dads only dinner, right? We've done a curry, we've done a few different things. But I was chatting to someone and he was like, oh yeah, no, this is amazing. Like, you've done what we all thought was a great idea, but just didn't take action on it. He was like, oh, I could never do that. And I sat there and then I asked him, what do you think I actually did? Yeah. Like, what do you think I actually did to get these people here? I was like, I'll tell you the exact 3 things that I did. I posted once on Facebook on a Ascot people group, like a local community Facebook group, with quite an honest post, right? Just saying, I want more dad friends. Anyone want to come down, meet in the park, we'll be here at this time. And then I created a WhatsApp group from the people that were in there. They invited friends. We got like 150 people there. Then one of the guys on the group ran a pub. So I messaged him and said, could you do a deal for 20 quid? And sent a message on WhatsApp. And we have 25 guys there, all having a great night. through three tiny actions, exactly like you said, Chris, picking up your phone and just doing something about it.
Yeah.
And again, it was just a really great story and illustration of like people think this is crazy, crazy stuff. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. Well, yeah, you could probably just put down your phone and not scroll on TikTok for half an hour, and be a lot more deliberate with the how you spend your time or how you invest your time towards something that you actually want.
Of course, it's like all of these things. It's like going into exercise or meeting up with mates, that sort of stuff. Quite often, particularly in full-on dad mode, we do feel tired. We feel like, oh, I really can't be asked for that today. I'd rather just sit and have a takeaway at home and watch Netflix or whatever. But actually, the people who then force themselves into doing it always come out with a new energy or a new story or a new connection that they didn't have previously, and they kind of feel good about it. So it's one of these things I talk about a lot is the idea of positive versus negative coping strategies. And quite often when men are not feeling their best, we default to negative coping. A lot of guys default to negative coping. And for some people, that's drinking too much. For some people, it's yeah, isolating themselves from friends and family. For some people, it's just being on social media all the time, and because that feels like an easier thing to do when you're not feeling your best, is just to take yourself away from it. But actually, the positive coping side of that is if you just muster up the energy and the courage or the brave mindset you might need if going to a park full of 150 dads that you've not met before, and you're not really a social person by nature. Just taking that step to do that sort of thing, all of a sudden you come away thinking, I did something for me today, or I did something that made me snap out of this funk that I've been in for a little while. And actually, all of a sudden, you go home and you're a slightly more energetic dad, you're a slightly more energetic husband, you're a slightly more energetic friend and family member. So, yeah, it's one of those things. I think it's very easy, but this comes down to self-awareness. So easy to switch into negative coping. You just got to catch yourself doing it and catch yourself when you're in that moment and then go, right, I can see what's happening here. That's why education is really important. I can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to take accountability. I'm going to do something different and make more informed and better choices.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And obviously you've written this book, right? So like it has some of these sort of strategies in there, some of the things that you observed. So tell me a bit of a background on what and why you were writing this book and what you hope it solves.
Yeah, I mean, this book really starts from our childhood. So, you and I grew up in Northern Ireland, and you and I went to the same school together. I don't think we hung out particularly much during school, but it's funny how paths kind of go different ways, then come back together again. But my experience of growing up as a guy, I obviously didn't talk about this at the time because it wasn't the right thing to do. Nor quite. My dad was a prison officer. And I wasn't able to talk about that because of all the troubles and everything else that was going on. So it kind of set me on a bit of a path of distrust. So I didn't trust very many people when I grew up because I was led to think, due to my family circumstances, that it would be unsafe to trust them because prison officers and police officers were not the jobs to have in Northern Ireland in the 90s. So as I come into adulthood, and particularly at university, I'm trying to explore what my version of my life was going to be, particularly as a guy. I found it really difficult to let people close to me, particularly relationships. Always very guarded, kept people at arm's length until I met my now wife, and she encouraged me to go to counselling, which I did in my late 20s. And this is on and off depression medication through my 20s, and different negative coping things that I used to get involved with all the time. But she encouraged me to go to counselling, and I kind of started learning about the issues that perhaps would have affected me as a guy, and how that's now shaping my relationships in this world. And I had a choice to make. I could either choose to let it define me, or I could choose to do something with that and think differently about the world. So that allowed me to get closer to my wife. We then got married, became a dad, but then I found being a dad really tough. And actually, I started blogging about it. With the blog I started doing about called The Secret Life of Dad. And from that, I started thinking, okay, what else is going on in the men's health space that no one is talking about openly for whatever reason? And then this time last year, beginning of 2024, my wife and I suffered 2 back-to-back miscarriages. And that really bothered me. Miscarriages aside, it bothered me that I didn't feel like I knew how to talk about it. I didn't feel like I had an outlet for what I was thinking or feeling, nor did I feel it was my place to talk about it, because after all, it was happening to my wife physically, not to me. So that started me down a bit of a rabbit hole of, right, same thing. I'm going to make a choice here. Either I can let this drive me mad, or I can channel this frustration into something different. And I started journaling. I started just writing it down, and that started forming chapters, and then that started forming a book. And I went down this rabbit hole of every time I've thought about a different strand of men's health, thinking, actually, I've got a point of view on that. I've got an opinion on that, and that started me talking about grief, addiction. Started me talking about body image and domestic abuse from my time at the police, and obviously relationships and fatherhood as well. And that forms the book today. And the title is Behind the I'm Fine, because that's our default response as men is, hey, is everything all right? Even if you're burning inside, yeah, it's fine, all good. Don't worry about it. These kind of ridiculous stoic, sign of strength, supposed sign of strength, which actually is just really silly. So I thought I'd put it down in words. It was a very cathartic exercise for me personally. And yeah, that's kind of where it came from, really. It's just to shine a light on my own personal experiences and personal experiences of other guys that I knew, and get it down in writing form, hopefully with a view of trying to change the narrative around what it means to be a man in this modern world.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And like some of those topics, as you said, just aren't really spoken about. So thanks to you for having the courage to actually write those things down. And, one of the things that jumped out of when you were talking there was this idea of there was a few times in your life where you could go down this path or you could go down this path. And it was ultimately your choice to do it, even though sometimes it feels like it's not, right? That idea of default, your brain going to this default way or saying the default, I'm fine. You can choose to do it differently, but like sort of what you're saying in the last question, you can have the courage to turn up at a park with some guys that you don't know, and you need to have the courage to act or to decide in a slightly different way, and that's the first step with all of these things, Chris, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. It's acknowledgement. It's acknowledgement of your feelings and actually how that's making you feel, but actually how that's making people around you feel. It's very, very easy to become a self-fulfilling prophecy because our mind and our bodies are so intrinsically linked in terms of how we think and feel and the impact that has on our relationships. There's no escaping the fact that they're all connected, and ignore any of them at your peril. And I guess you can choose. Yeah, you can choose. I mean, I've got people in my life, family members who I would say have chosen a different path to me. Same setup, same upbringing, same kind of circumstances, but they've chosen to go down a very different path in life, and have become a self-fulfilling prophecy of misery. And I chose not to do that. I was like, I can either take hold of my destiny here or let it drive me absolutely nuts. And one of the things that really helped me, I suppose, is yes, selfishly and cathartically, it was good to get it out of my head. But then it kind of gets you thinking about purpose and legacy. I'm at a stage of my life now where, with a child and another child on the way, what's my legacy? What am I leaving behind? What am I doing to try and make my small corner of the earth better than when I left it? And I didn't think that way in my teens, my 20s, or even my early 30s. But now, kind of pushing 40, kind of think, actually, I'm in that space of, yeah, what do I want to be known for? What do I want to leave behind? And so the purpose element feeds my energy now in this space, thinking if I can make a small difference here, then that's great. Then I've lived my life in the way that I wanted to, or at least left something behind which is memorable for the right reasons.
Yeah, when you said pushing 40 there, I was like, Jesus, we are pushing 40.
I know.
I never quite see myself as that. But then when you said that, I was like, that's me as well. Before this, we were talking about me going to a 10-year wedding anniversary of one of my friends, and I'm like, how is this happening? But yeah, no, I love all of that, Chris. That's all great, and like that awareness piece, like you said, is probably combines with taking the time to actually acknowledge what's going on. Whereas the opposite default thing to do is just keep your head down and keep going. And like you talked about, people have defaulted to a different path in your life and they're not as happy, fulfilled, have that purpose that you have. But I think the interest in the counterintuitive thing, the way our mind works, is the choices that you've making are the harder ones to make in the moment, right?
Yeah.
It's easy. It's much easier. It's much more comfortable to just keep your head down and just keep going and not look up. Because in the short term, that's all your mind craves. It's like the comfort. Doesn't really give a shit about your fulfillment, your purpose. All it really wants is you to stay alive. It takes you to not go down that default path and think a little bit deliberately and go, like, what do I care about? I've got these, I've got Orla, I've got another baby in the way. What do you want my legacy to be? What actions do I need to take today? So when I'm in 30, 40 years and I look back, and hopefully they haven't put me in a nursing home by then reflecting back on my life, I'm proud of the life that I've lived. And I think that's the paradox with all of this. It's like you have to make the choices now. You have to invest the time now. And the more you kick the can down the road, which is super tempting when you're in the situation and stage of life that we're in.
Yeah.
Because there's so much on that, like, but you have to reflect and you have to make that decision and choice now.
Yeah, I talk a lot at the beginning of the book about self-worth, and actually it's one of the things that I kind of liken it to like a shield of self-worth or a shield of purpose. And when life's mundane things slap you in the face, like the chores you got to do, the late nights, the early starts of fatherhood, the whatever's going on, the shitty emails at work that you got to deal with, whatever it is, if you don't have a shield of purpose around you, or you don't know what you stand for, what you care about, and what's important to you, then those things seep in and they steal your energy and they make you feel a particular type of way, which is not pleasant. But if we're able to identify what matters to us and what we're doing it for and what we're trying to achieve, what we want to be known for, what we really, what our principles are and our belief system is, if we can identify that, and that takes some self-reflection, by the way, and some of it will be really deep, introspective self-reflection. Some people might be able just to go, get it, I know exactly what that is. But in my experience, that's not the case, particularly for guys. But when we get it, that shield that we put around us just backs a lot of life's noise away from us and allows us just to be our true, authentic selves more often than not, and show up for the people we care about or the things we care about as our best selves more often than not. So it's for me, that's a real call to action from the book is, if any guy, and actually this applies to women as well, but any guy who can answer that question about what do you care about? What is the thing in your life that you care about the most? If you can't answer that question, then that's a starting point. That's the place to start, to figure that out, and then let everything else sit around it.
And it all feeds from that. I love that term. Shield of purpose is so great. I'm really excited to read the book, by the way. And like that we started on this whole idea of, your version of living deliberately and being that deliberate dad is having time for Chris, is doing all of the things that you choose to do in order to show up for yourself, totally, to get that enjoyment and fulfillment, but also so you can serve others, right? For everyone and everything that matters. And it's really interesting, this idea of the shield of purpose. Some guys have put themselves last for so long that I've had conversation with some people where I'm like, do something for yourself, and they don't know what that is, right? Like they don't even know what they like anymore.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a rebuilding from that point. Go to the pub for a pint, try climbing, go to and play some paddle, go for a walk, right? It almost gets that fundamental. And it might be, right? So like if you're listening to this and thinking, oh yeah, I have no idea where I could start with my shield of purpose. Well, one, read Chris's book. I'm sure he'll be able to give you some frameworks in that. But also, like, have a think about what you actually like, right? And get into action and movement and momentum, because I'm sure you've experienced this as well, Chris, and some of the people that you've talked to. It's not necessarily, hitting our goals. It's not necessarily going, oh, I'm now qualified to be a linesman in the Football League, right? It's more taking the action on the path to get there, and you've defined where you want to go, right? And there's a reason why. It's like stepping on the path. Like my life is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, right? Like my business is still in its early stages, it's growing, it's chaotic with two kids in the house. My wife runs her own business. I could be in better shape. I could see my friends more. I could do all of these things. But I feel really aligned with the path that I'm on. Like I know what my shield of purpose is, to use your language. I know what my gold standards are, to use my language.
Yeah.
And I'm being really deliberate with the actions that I'm taking every day to get there. So again, I think like one of the sentiments of this conversation has been like create some awareness, make a choice, and take some action, right? And start moving forward, because actually that's the only way to create that clarity in your mind. If you don't know where to start, sit with yourself, have a little cup of coffee, go like, what do I care about? What do I like doing? And just take that as a first step.
Yeah, massively so. And the point we talked about earlier, this doesn't need to be massive life altering decisions. It can literally just be the little message to a mate, or to your point, go and do a sport that you love doing, walk in the park, read a new book, do whatever. Just do something for you. Give yourself that permission, I suppose, to be the guy that you are, and that'll help you work out who the guy you want to be is. And that doesn't take wholesale government policy or big budgets or anything like that to do it. It just takes, to your using your words now, just some deliberate action.
Amazing. I love that, Matt. I love that. Thank you so much for this. Have you got anything else to add?
No, just thank you for the opportunity to have a conversation. I think these types of conversation are thankfully becoming more normal. There feels like there's a bit of momentum behind it, and so for anyone kind of listening or watching, it starts with us. It starts with the decisions that we make. We don't need to wait for big things around us to change. Just focus on your little corner of the world, and make a difference there. Be the guy that you want to be, and be the ally the world needs. But it starts with you. It starts with the decisions you make and the energy that you bring and the energy that you show up with. And that's all in our control. Nothing else, nothing can stop the decisions that we make. It's in our control to do the things we want to do. We've just got to allow ourselves to do it.
Beautiful. Love that, Matt. Love that, Chris. So, Chris is a very articulate speaker, as you've got. So, where can people find out about speaking opportunities, where to buy your book, all the socials, all of that stuff? Because I've loved, well, this is how this came about, right? Us connecting on LinkedIn, liking each other's material, knowing the book's coming up. I've watched some of your keynotes. I've loved those as well. So, yeah, where can people find out about you?
Yeah, well, the book itself is available on Amazon and Waterstones and all that sort of stuff. And check out my website. So it's just my name with a hyphen in the middle. So just chris-britton.com, and you can see all the stuff that I do there. Feel free to hit me up on socials. Always happy for a chat. Slide in my DMs if you like. I'm more than happy to do that as well. But yeah, looking forward to the book. Reviews starting to come in, and we'll see. Hopefully, everyone buys into it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they will, Matt. I'm sure they will. And I'll link all of that in the description. So thank you so much, Chris, again. Massively appreciated. And good luck with the book. I can't wait to read it. And I'm sure we'll be here having round two at some point.
Yeah, Steve, I hope so.
Cheers, Chris.